Hello everybody, it's Super Saturday. This is Tracie SteveFerra and SteveFerra, and we're joining you for a little bit just to talk about our relationship, a little bit about how we communicate and how it works for me working Beachbody, because Steve still works his job, he loves what he does.
Yeah.
And how we can make this work and him still support me. So we were invited to talk to you about that. First, I just wanted to give you a brief background. We met in 1985.
Yeah, a long time
a
ago.
long time ago. We've been together 32 years. We'll be married 30 years in August. Yay.
Yep, I won't forget.
And you won't forget.
Yep.
He won't forget.
30 years.
Because I put it on Google Calendar. We have 3 kids. 2 are grown in their 20s, and we still have a daughter at home who's a junior in high school. So, what did you go to school for?
I was an engineering student, graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, but I haven't wired. I wire a light switch in the house. It's the only electrical work I've ever done.
You were Air Force.
And that went right into the Air Force, thank goodness, because I really didn't want to be an engineer right away, but it was a heck of a degree. I've been using it since then. And I was an Air Force navigator for about 20 years, and then did other jobs in the Air Force for another 8, and just retired out of the reserves about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I used to have 2 jobs. My job in the FAA as a software engineer, and the Air Force Reserves on a couple weekends a month and some longer trips. But now I'm down to 1 job. Every weekend is a vacation.
It is. Yep. And that's been a great thing, is having him home. You know, many of you are military. They're gone more than you think once they're home. We didn't realize how much he was gone till he's around. So briefly, we met in college. I was a nursing student. So I got my BSN and my MRS in school. And then we were in the military.
My grades went up and your grades went down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk to you about our communication, because that's so important when one spouse is doing Beachbody and the other is working, and Steve loves what he does. And so the first thing we did was we wanted to go through 10 areas in our life, and we scored them from 1 to 10. And he did his separately than I did mine. He did for him and I did for mine. So grab a pen and we'll read them off. So just give yourself between a 1 and a 10 where you fall. 10 being it's great, exactly like I want it, and 1 being tons of work needed. So the first would be your physical health. Obviously your Beachbody coaches, but where do you fall in physical health? The second is your emotional health. The third is your environment. That could be your house, that could be your office. That means something different to everybody, but your environment. The fourth being your financial. Where are you financially? And you want to do this separate than your spouse, because then you're going to come together and compare. The next being leisure. So vacation, that kind of thing. Family and friends is the next one. Don't include your spouse on that. So your relationship with your family and friends, where does that fall? The next one being spouse. We scored each other different.
Really close.
Really close.
But different.
I scored him a 10 and he gave me a 9. Well, us a 9.
That doesn't mean I gave you a 9. It meant that I thought I could improve.
But we were really close.
Yeah.
The next was purpose and career. Mine was very low. I scored myself low, and Steve scored himself high.
Yeah,
he loves what he does.
I like my job. That's true. Yep.
And I was beat up nursing. The next is personal growth. I scored myself pretty high, but I was wrong. You know, I've grown so much more since becoming a Beachbody coach. And the final being spiritual. That means something different to everyone. So that's what we did. And then you want to compare them with each other. They're going to be different. We see things differently, and opening a communication is what's super important. And look at it in what were your lowest areas, 3 or 4 lowest areas, because you could have a tie, and what was his 3 or 4 lowest areas. And then that opened us for communication because, you know, my job was a low area, his was a high area, so it allowed us to communicate. So that's the first thing, is opening your communication. The next thing we did was, after we looked at that, we set policies, and I'll let him talk about the policies. You know, on where your low and high areas were. Okay, if I'm working from home, I can't be working from home 24/7, so we needed to set some policies on how this was going to work.
Yeah, and that went both ways too. So part of what the policies are for are just so you both find some common areas to connect in. So you can call them compromises if you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be compromised because you agree on a lot of them. Like, for example, I travel a lot, and I don't really mind traveling. I enjoy the travel. They're shorter trips, but they were often, but they cause some, I wouldn't even call it stress, but it's different at home. It's easier having 2 parents at home running the house than one. And so we started to make a policy that I would just not refuse necessarily, but I would avoid traveling more than 1 week of the month. And I've been pretty much able to do that.
We really have.
But had we not talked about that, I would have continued to be the good employee that I am, and I would have taken every trip my boss offered me, not really realizing the impact it had on home. So that was one thing. Another was not allowing work or other issues to get in the way of attending your kids' events. We're a perfect example of, I can't believe we're here now. Our 2 oldest are not long gone, but they're gone.
They're gone.
And now our daughter's a junior high school, and when they're grown up and gone, they're gone. And if you miss their events, you're going to regret it. So we decided to make that a priority. Most parents do, but if you don't write it down and say at least one of us is going to be at every event, even if occasionally you strayed from that, at least you have a policy that you're straying from, and you know you're straying from it, so you'll get back right back on it as soon as you can. That one was a no-brainer, but just the act of writing it down sort of drilled it in, didn't it? And dating, I think she came up with that one.
I did.
Not me, because and I don't know why. It's just that honestly, the dating it's more important to you than it is to me. I'm just happy anyway, but dating makes her really happy. So that was a policy.
Well, I think it's because
continue to date, right?
I'm home.
Yeah.
And I just want to get out of the house.
Yeah.
You know.
So this is not a marriage counseling video, but a lot of this stuff just does exactly that. It's just we can keep saying the word communication over and over again. But there's stuff you stop talking about after you've been married a long time, and after you get into these rhythms of, and I got up every day happy to go to work, so that's a nice rhythm. She wasn't quite as happy about going to work, but it's still a rhythm you get into, and you forget about what really makes you happy and what your goals are for down the road. So that's part of what this is for.
Business dates. Sometimes we don't do as well with this, but we try to sit down and talk about what's going on in my business once a month.
Yeah, and I think
get
people,
feedback.
There's plenty of people out there who do run their own businesses, but trying to run our own business was very new for us. Yes. Because I just work for someone and I help them, but I'm not really running that business. I'm just a great employee. But it's different when you're running your own business. You're responsible for everything, so you have to create some policies so that the business stays on track and tries to meet its goals. And it's not just a matter of going to the office and spending time working your business. You kind of have to have some goals, so you're not just working every day. You're actually building a business. So that was huge.
So everybody has different policies. Some of you may have, spiritual policy. Policy is a weird word, but that you're going together, to church or whatever. So everybody's going to have very different policies.
Oh. Yeah, I'm looking at her notes. This is a big one down here. She already mentioned it once, but for folks like me who have a normal leave the house, go to work, and come home, your hours are sort of they're sort of implied anyway, right? I mean, you leave and you come back every day.
Well, they're
And
set
most,
for you.
yeah, most people leave the work there. I mean, I do some work at home too, but when you Beachbody being largely a business you can do from your home, you can, and she did this a lot early on. It's because not actually one of the reasons was you enjoyed it.
Yes.
And she would pour herself into people, and before you know it,
it was 11 p.m.
I come by her office and I'm like, oh, she's still on the phone, and so
Yeah.
I clean up the dinner, and oh, she's still on the phone. Then I go up to bed, and eventually she come up. You know, could there be time differences? You're working with people in California, and we're on the East Coast, and before you know it, it was late, and there was no cutoff for her hours. So running a business from home, that's real important if you want to maintain a balance with the rest of your family. It's not just put in hours for hours' sake. You sort of have to set some guidelines. So policies, you can just call them guidelines if you want to, or boundaries, but they're pretty important.
And what that leads into is how you set up a calendar. How do you make this work? So you went through your evaluating the areas that you need growth and that are important to you, and you went through your policies and you set your policies. So now what the heck do you do with this? So what we first did is you pull out the calendar, and I love the system where you have seasons or quarters. I know some Beachbody coaches work in 90 days, some work in 100 days, depending on quarters. And we had to say, okay, I'm going to center on something special. Now, I'm not talking about our power hours and what we do every day, but the extra stuff you do on the side. So I'm going to have 2 seasons where I'm doing something extra. And where are we going to fit all of this into a calendar? So we share a Google Calendar. That's how we do it. He sees mine and I see his. He shares the stuff I need and vice versa.
If Google ever goes under, we're done.
We're in trouble.
We're done.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Everything's on there.
You divide it, and then you categorize. And the first thing you need to do is pull out your 2017 calendar and fill it out. Your non-negotiables are first. Everybody's birthday, everybody's anniversary, that kind of things. If you take a vacation, fill it in. That was one of our policies, is a vacation a year and or a staycation a year. Try to do 2. Get every non-negotiables in that are family. Then the second is job non-negotiables. Steve needs to travel once. Usually it's 1 week out of the month. Might not be the whole week, but 1 week out of the month. So if as far ahead of time as we can, get that down. And for me, Summit to me is a non-negotiable. So that's in the calendar. And the Super Saturdays, which you guys know we're talking to on Super Saturday.
And I don't know if we can talk, I mean, I think there's a lot of wives who do this, and husbands are trying to understand it. There's some others, but there's a lot more of that, I think. I had no idea what Summit was. I didn't know why it was so non-negotiable until we talked about it.
And he came.
Because on paper and online, it looks like a party.
Yeah.
But it's, I finally went to one, and that's when a lot of this stuff clicked for me. That's when I realized it is fun.
Yes.
There's everything about the Beachbody is fun, but it has real substance to it, and I got all that when I went to one of those events. So then that became a non-negotiable. We'll plan things around that to make sure that you can, because that's a big part of your annual look at the business. Yep.
Yep. And then the third thing you put on the calendar is wishes. Your wishes. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. For example, my team, one of the my uplines does a big event in the fall every November. Well, it's on my wish list, but that was during one of my children's birthdays was every year, so I didn't go. So we have wish list stuff that we put on that maybe it could happen, maybe not. And then, like we said, we share our calendar. We've got to share our calendar. He needs to know what's going on. It doesn't make sense. He might not be as active in coaching as I am, but he has to know what's going on. If one spouse is, the front person and is coaching, and you're sharing a checkbook, you both have the business. And the other thing that we talked about was the seasons. So I just finished a season where I revamped some training for my team. And that was really important to me. There were some things that were working, you know, and that was one of my seasons. And then right now I'm in a growth season where I'm concentrating on helping my team grow their teams. And in the summer is a non-season, except for Summit, you know, because that we say, you know, summer's
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't completely shut down. You just don't push as hard in the summer.
right. I don't have anything
Try to
extra
still
in
enjoy
this.
your life.
Absolutely, the
That's
summer
the beauty
is
of running your own business. If you wanna,
power
back
hour.
off a little bit, you back off. But if you plan it, you don't feel guilty about doing it because that was the plan, and you already had, you know, like you said, if your term for it was a season or an area where you're pushing real hard, and it just it takes a lot of the stress out of your year if you lay it all out.
If
like
you
that.
lay it all out, you know, power hour, your business work you do every day, the inviting and the following up and the reaching out to people continues all the time.
Yeah.
But that extra stuff, if you've got it on your calendar and you're communicating about it, it's really important. It doesn't mean we always agree. You know, I tend to be a spender. He tends to rein me back in. You know, so it's
Well,
a
that's
give
the
and
whole-
take.
That's the whole thing. Like, I mean, anytime, any policy, you always stray from it. But if you never wrote it down, there's nothing to stray from. There's nothing to come back to. So, you know, we've had plenty of times where we forgot to. We had a busy month and we never had a date. We didn't talk about the business. That's one more thing I could offer to the spouses is it's being supportive about for the other spouse that's really driving this is it's a lot more than, and I do this too, but I mean sometimes I hear a finish with someone and I ask, how did that go? Who are you talking to? What are they like? And I know she likes to tell me that, but that's just kind of we're just talking about things with the if I call them the supporting spouse or the less active spouse. Should probably also do is ask occasionally for them to explain stuff to you. Show some not fake interest, but show some interest in how to, because I hear talking about where are you placing those coaches? Why do you do it that way? And what are you trying to do in like the next month? You seem to be pushing at something, and it fires the other spouse up a little bit to know that you're actually interested in what they're doing in that other room of the house. So
and he needs to know that when I'm home, I'm working.
Yeah, and I am generally interested. I don't have to master what she's mastering, but you do ask for help on certain things sometimes, certain things that I can
He's
help
an
with.
IT guy.
So yeah, if I just left it with, well, she's in the office talking to people about fitness and never went any further, there's just no connection to the business. So get a little more, involved in what the business is, even if you're not actually conducting it yourself. It means a lot to your spouse, and you might even find an area that you can suggest something from your other experience that, hey, did you ever think about this? And they might say, wow, that's a great idea. I mean, just get involved, and chances are you'll stumble into an area you can really help each other with.
Well, I hope that helped you. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And have a great Super Saturday. I hope everybody's screaming at the announcements.
They do nothing but scream at those places.
Have a great day.